73, part 3.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Judy.
And I'm Carol.
Thank you. Do we have to do that each time?
No, I don't think so. But that's fine. And we have a guest in the audience. It's Lisa. Say hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
She's enjoying the beverages. If you can see, we're not doing wine this time. We are doing
French 75.
But isn't this one? There's another one that's American.
It's called French 75.
Oh, okay.
And there's two versions. The original had cognac, and now they use gin.
Okay. I don't mind the cognac one. I'm not a fan of the gin, but that's okay. But you like the gin, and you like both, right?
Yeah, I like both. And so I'm a little high.
Well, it's my turn.
Day drinking.
Day drinking.
A
Yeah.
little
So
day
it's
drinking.
my turn to do the topic.
Okay.
And the reason I decided to do this topic called My Spiritual Journey is because that you may, if you watch our podcast, sometimes you'll hear me like talk about God, and I'm like, I roll my eyes. And I wanted people to know that I didn't come to where I am now in my life easily. It wasn't like, people that say, oh, I believe in the Bible, or I don't believe in the Bible. I'm like, oh, have you read it? No.
You think that Trump has read his Bible?
No, we don't even want to talk about him. So, no, we know he didn't. But I know a lot of people that, I remember when I started becoming curious about the Bible, seriously curious, people would say, oh, I believe in it. And then I'm like, well, have you read it? And they said, no. So anyway, going back to when I was a child, and I was raised in a Catholic home, sort of Catholic, because my mom became Catholic in order to marry my dad. She loved my dad. She never regretted marrying my dad, but she did regret having to give up her faith, she was a Methodist. So I got that both in my household. I got, her points of view. She used to always say, Jesus isn't on the cross anymore. I don't know why the Catholics still have him up on the cross. So, she was raised that he's risen, he's off the cross, that kind of thing. So as a child, I remember vividly, I may have been 6 or 7 years old, sitting on the front steps near our porch. And it was a beautiful, clear day. The sky was beautiful. And there was a few clouds. And I looked up and I kind of challenged God. I said, if you're there, stick your hand through the cloud. I'm like 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. So I was curious then, just who God was. And so he didn't. I'm just saying there was no hand come through. So as I, got older, I was listening to my mom, different things she was telling me. And then I also, heard what the nuns how they were, we would go to a vacation Bible school. I don't know if it was called that in the Catholic Church, but in the summer we went and they would talk about, our one had to make our first communion, and the nuns told us that our sins meant how black our soul was. So it was like, your soul is inside, and if you have a lot of sins, it's going to be black.
That's only mortal sin, Carol.
Well, I'm telling you what the nuns told me. So, you're listening to this, and I don't know how much I really believe them, though. Like, some people like, it's gospel, it's from the nun, but I don't know if I really believe that. But then we also had, every Friday when school was, we had school, we would go to something, so I don't even know what they called it. We met with the priest, the whole everything, and he inculcate us about religion. And I remember asking him something, and I wish I could remember what I asked him. But he sternly told me, we never, ever question God. Never. And he said it very sternly. And I, because I was 16, said, I'm not questioning God, I'm questioning you. And he didn't like that too much. But I'm like, I wanted an answer, and he wouldn't answer me. So then at 19 years old, about 19, I ended up, because I saw Jesus Christ Superstar, and that really affected me, because it's a great soundtrack. And I ended up buying The Way. It was called The Way, the Living Bible, and it had a picture of young people on the cover.
Yeah.
And my mother was very excited that I was reading this. And I was studying it, and I came across this verse when I was reading The Way. And so it said, now this is when I began my journey as a Christian. I said, Jesus saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen, and yet they have believed. And that spoke to me then. That really did. I'm like, oh my gosh, I believe, you know. So I really got into the Bible. And then I got married, and the man I married, I got him involved in the Bible. I don't know how seriously he believed it, but he went along for the ride. The audience member that we have here, Lisa, she was along for the ride. She saw me in this journey. She saw me, and that's another thing I want to be very clear is that even though I changed my mind, I wasn't flippant. I was very, very sincere when I began, and I'm very, very sincere when I stopped. And I'll explain why. Lacey, you are driving me nuts. My dog is driving me nuts. Anyway, so when I got married, my then husband, he had a friend who belonged to a Baptist church, and they invited us to go to the Baptist church. These two would have hated me during that time in my life because I was definitely a born-again Christian, what I thought was to be a born-again Christian, and I lived that life, and I ended up becoming a deaconess in the church. I don't know if you even knew that. Oh, okay. And taught Bible. We had Bible studies in my home. Lisa can validate that. And it was a time in my life that it was important to me. Then I started questioning things that I was coming across in the Bible. I was, let me see if I want to go in order, whatever. I began asking different questions, and we would be very involved with the pastor would lead Bible studies and we'd go. And he did the book of Job. And in the book of Job, if you're not familiar with Job, Job has a lot of trials. He loses a lot of things because Satan goes to God in the Bible and says he is going to turn against you if you would take all this away from him. And so, you know, he loses his children. He loses, he stayed married. His wife kept telling him to just tell you don't believe in God. And she was like, she had enough of it. But he wouldn't. He got leprosy. I believe he had some skin disease or whatever. So then, by the end, though, he got rewarded. And so he ended up getting more children and that kind of thing. And so in the Bible study, one of the women said, God honored him, but the reason why he got punished is because he had wine with his dinner.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I went, what?
I'm going to hell.
So I was just like, no. And then she goes, but God honored him. And I looked at her and I said to her, you have 2 children, right? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, so if they died and you had more children, they're replaceable? Everybody in the room kind of looked at me. And she's like, no. I said, well, if we take this as gospel, I wouldn't be happy with a God that put me in front of, that let me use me as a pawn piece. I'm not happy with that. So I started getting away from the church, and I almost had a mental breakdown, literally, because I was taught that the devil had his way with you. He was making you question things. So I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm questioning things. God, the devil's having his way, but I can't stop questioning these things. And the pastor came to visit me, and he wanted to know, what, and I told him what I was thinking. He goes, Carol, no one ever dares ask what you're asking, because there aren't answers. I said, exactly. I said, I can't worship a God that wants me to, go blindly like this. But the straw that broke the camel's back for me was a young boy, 15 years old, in our church. I don't know, I'm not going to say why I think he did it, but he committed suicide. Oh, and he was very involved, his family was very involved in the church. And I said to the pastor, my heart breaks for that boy, because the Bible promises that you will not have more than you can bear. And he goes, I know. And he goes, his parents, when they get to heaven, they're going to say
God.
what we, and I went, no, I don't care about the parents right now. I care about that 15-year-old boy who took his father's gun and put it in his mouth. I was like, he got more than he could bear. And he goes, oh, hello. I was just like, I was like 15 years old, and he couldn't go to anybody. He was being raised in this church. And it was a fundamentalist Bible-believing church. So I was really, really struggling with where I was in my spiritual life. I stopped going to the church. I stopped doing the Bible studies, and Lisa will tell you. And I was just struggling with all of it. And then, you come to a point when you're like, okay, all right, I'm not struggling so much anymore, and I'm breaking free from this. Mm-hmm. I'm like, the clouds are separating for me. I had one friend, and I haven't seen her in years, and she was the only friend that I still had from the church. And I remember we were together, and she goes, oh, I don't know if I want to be around you, because I don't want to be backslidden like you are. Like, I don't want to go.
Contaminated.
Yeah, I don't want to go to hell. Like she said, I was going to hell.
God.
She really thought I'm going to hell, and so one time she said to me, because there was a young man in our church who cheated on his wife, and then he ended up getting sick with cancer, and she goes, he got punished. He got sick with cancer, and I looked at her and I said, Joanne, how did your father die? Oh, I shouldn't have said her name. and she said, oh, cancer. Like, let's think about this.
Yeah.
And then she was like so afraid to even question in these things because she saw what it did for me.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started becoming more and more active as a writer, and I wrote it started out as a memoir. It was of little faith, and but then I realized who really cares what I have to say, and ended up becoming a novel, which I liked a lot, because every character in that novel seemed to be a part of me, and Lisa agrees with that. There was the spiritual side, and then the one that was rebellious, and then the one struggling in between, and all of that. So that I wrote that, and so I always look at my young children, and I think we're taught that God is our Father. And when you say your Father, like as a parent. And as a parent, I could never put anything poisonous on the counter, like in cookies, and say, don't touch them though. Mm-hmm. Don't touch them. They might, if I got
They taste really good, but
don't touch them. And that's with Adam and Eve. And then I realized that's just all a fictional story.
Just made up, right?
But it was
with the woman being the temptress.
Yeah,
yes, and to control. Which
led to the downfall of humanity, right?
Exactly.
The woman.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, really did come to the Lord sincerely, and I came to my senses sincerely. And I just wanted to share that. It's very personal because, I know a lot of people have faith. That's fine, if that's what gets you through the day. I have not prayed since. I had some health issues that anyone would have thought I would have prayed, but I refused to pray because I don't believe in asking if I'm not going to, worship or whatever. But, I just, the world, the universe is gazillion years old. And the Bible was written 5,000? Oh, the world was, they say it started 5,000 years old. And the Bible was written 2,000 years ago. And it was so limited in what it was saying, and people always point out, about, homosexuality being a sin. But they ignore so many of the other verses about a farmer can get murdered if he plants seeds that are different next to each other. And this is in Leviticus.
So it's not the complete Bible either. It was, they picked and choose chapters to put in.
Oh yeah, they won't exactly.
Yeah.
You don't know why it was the book that and I was raised to believe that it was inspired by the Holy Spirit. So that's where I'm at, and I just wanted to share that just because often we just kind of roll our eyes, or we're and it does. It's important to me that people know that I didn't come to this lightly.
Well, there's power in speaking your truth, and that's what you're doing, and it's powerful in that way to put it out there and speak your truth, and that's important. We should all do that.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I went to 12 years at Catholic school. Mm. So I was a kid, so I just accepted what was taught to me. Catholics aren't Bible thumpers anyway. We did 1 year in elementary school, the Old Testament, which I loved, because I always loved fairy tales. And to me, it was like a book of fairy tales.
Yeah.
Some
And,
are pretty rough.
and well, some fairy tales are pretty
Yes,
rough when you
the
think about it.
Brothers
They're
Grimm.
very,
Yes.
very dark.
Yeah, that's true.
And then with the New Testament, it really was just a chronicle of the life of Jesus. When you think about it, and that's
well,
okay.
There's a big gap there, though.
Yes, there is, yeah.
There's that big gap.
There is,
It's
yeah.
like-
Yeah, but
yeah.
after I graduated from high school, I immediately stopped going to church because we moved. And then I realized I don't like this new church because I don't know anybody. And then I realized that church was like a social thing. It was like you felt like you belonged to a community, and I knew all the people that were in my community and in our parish. And then when we moved from Brooklyn to Queens, and the first couple of months that we were there, I was going to Mass, and I didn't feel like I belonged.
Wow.
And then I really started like just drifting away from, like my religious views. It
Right.
wasn't important to me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I had my kids, I put them through religious instruction because I thought I should, and they were baptized. One of them was confirmed, the other one wasn't, because I was kind of like getting away from it. And
50-50, yeah.
and like they went their own way too. Like they're atheists. It's like
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like that now too. It's like
Yeah, I know when I said something to a neighbor, because we were having a discussion about the political climate and all that stuff, and we have somebody that we know is very religious, and I said, well, I'll just admit to them I'm an atheist. But my neighbors were just like for me to say that, it's like jarring. Like they're not religious, but to say that.
Well, most people do believe in God, and I think most people believe in God because it's comforting to believe in God.
Right.
It's comforting to believe that when you die, it's not the end of everything.
Right.
And like part of me says, I don't really believe it, but gotta have my fingers crossed because I don't want it to be the end of me either.
Right.
So,
yeah.
it is what it is.
It is what it is. No,
Yeah.
and there was just it was. Again, I think my siblings, they had a hard time with me when I was a very born again Christian. I wasn't drinking. I was, very religious.
You really wouldn't have
You
liked
weren't
that.
drinking?
I know.
Jeez.
No, I didn't. Although, then once we did start, like it was a New Year's Eve, and we had friends of ours from the church.
She let loose. She's
Yeah.
wearing the lampshade on her head.
No, we did have wine, and then the pastor's wife asked to see me, and she goes, I hear that you had wine on New Year's Eve. And I said, yeah, we did. And then she was like, then I realized the more she kept talking to me, she wanted to find out if my marriage was in trouble. She was gossiping.
Yes.
It was
That's
a gossip.
exactly what it was.
And I'm just like, I am on to you. I tell you, I was so grateful. Because, when I first started becoming this born-again Christian, I was that, I'm thirsty for something, I'm thirsty. I got my fill.
You were thirsty for wine, Carol.
That's what turns me off a lot about it too. Is I was raised Catholic as well, and I, like you, Peggy, I gave it a shot too, and after for a while, and I believed in all of the Kabbalah, got all the sacraments.
Hocus pocus.
And after college, I went and I read the Bible on my own.
Yeah.
And I sat and I read the Bible. And then I attended church on my own. I'd go on Sundays. I did that for a while. And like you, I didn't feel like I belonged.
Yeah.
The other step I would say is I felt like I was surrounded by a bunch of hypocrites.
In
the parish, that I would go to, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to name it, the parish, but I would look around like, I know them. I go, oh, I also know what they do. I know what they do. I know, and I just didn't feel comfortable. And I said, is this really just kind of a get out of jail free card, for a lot of it? And I said, I can do my own thing. Now, I think I'm different than the pair of you, and it's that I do believe in God, and I do believe in I would categorize myself as spiritual, but not for the reasons you are saying. It's not because I'm afraid. I am not afraid of death.
Yeah.
And I am not, I mean, I've seen a lot of different things. I kind of have an idea already.
Yeah, you have.
And it has nothing to do with being a God. And I'm just saying, and it's, maybe everyone's going to say, oh, the commandments now, you should believe in one God. But I'm like, you know, I think that there's truth in a lot of different beliefs out here. And so I'm not here to say there is just the one, you know, but I think that for me, I do believe in God, but I'm not in a religion.
Right.
And you know what? Religion is all about control.
It is,
think about
but
it.
I just want to add one, if you don't mind, because there was a point that you said about the gossip, and I think that's a big part of it too, which also turned me off, because I did not raise my kids in a religion or like a cult. So they weren't baptized by the church. I baptized them in the bathtub. They're baptized girls. I did it myself, which was, hey, it was good enough for St. John in the river. You know, you'll be good. You know, and but you know, I wasn't married in a church. You know, or to the sacraments. I said, but because of the community I live in, everybody kind of goes and does it. So I remember the girls being rushed in. I felt really bad for them at the time. They go to a Girl Scout meeting, actually, and the girls went up and said, "Pull on the girl." I guess a bunch of girls had said something to like, "You don't believe in God. You didn't go to communion." It was around that time. And the girls came to me kind of very upset, saying, "The kids think we don't believe in God, Mom." And I go, first, you know, so you had to talk, like, basically piss off with these kids. I said, but when I realized it's the parents who are gossiping about my kids and me, which then their kids hear that. And so what do they think? You know, and so I said, and these are Catholics and good Christians, right? We don't need them. And so that's a lot of what turned me off. Before there was an organized religion, there was spirituality. And so who's to say it's right or wrong?
Right.
You know, the reason why I put my kids through the religious instruction was because my stepdaughter used to come and spend the weekend with us, and she was friends with the other kids on the block. They were teenagers, and they all used to go to Mass on Sunday, and Debbie, you know, went with them a lot of times because they were all hanging out. And she said to me once, she said, "I don't know anything about God." And all the other kids that she was hanging out with then did, because they were all Catholics and went to St. James Parish. And she said, "My parents never taught me anything about God. She never went to religious instruction." And I thought, when my kids were born, I don't want them ever to have to say that. I don't care if you reject it. Like, my parents raised us with a religion. Most of us rejected it, you know, when we got older, but that's fine. I had something, a basis to make a choice on. And I wanted to give my kids that choice, and as soon as they became adults, they did reject it, you know, being thinking people, and, you know, and not that they're not spiritual people. There's a difference between spirituality and being religious. To me, religion has caused more problems in this world than anything else.
Religion causes people not to think for themselves, and I think what I've always tried to raise my children on is, you know, this is what I think, but you know what, you think for yourselves, like what you're doing, and don't be beholden to like what you were being forced, not forced, but what you were being raised and trying to, and then if you have a question, explore it. And
don't judge other people for what they believe.
That's something that I instilled in my kids. I said, you don't ever judge anybody else. And it's unfortunate that they were judged. I said, but you know what? You learned it. But what I didn't want to be a person was a hypocrite, like what you see. And I didn't do the sacraments. And I heard from so many people around that time, a lot of my friends, but also some people, my friends oh, we're just doing it just to please the mother-in-law or
Yes,
please
yeah,
the father-in-law. And I'm
right.
like,
No respect for that.
I'm like, well, what are we teaching our kids?
Yeah,
That we have to spend our lives to please, our spiritual is to please somebody else.
Right.
I said, if
Well,
you don't
I didn't
believe
do
in
it
that,
because of that. I didn't do it to please anybody in my family.
no, I didn't. I wasn't saying you
But
were. Yeah,
You
but I
better
heard-
not be saying that, Judy. You
No,
better
I
not
wasn't.
be judging
Well,
me.
give me another more of this, and I might say it.
Well, there was just two things that I had flashback memories of my stepping away from the church, the Baptist church. One was this lovely man, a deacon, just a sweetheart, and I felt like he and his wife were not judgmental. They were very welcoming, but he started to grow a beard, and it looked good. But he was a deacon, and so they had a whole meeting about it.
Oh my God!
Should he keep the beard? And I was like, please keep the beard, please. And he shaved to satisfy them.
Wow.
I lost a little respect for him with
Yeah.
that. And another one was we had a friend who was part of the church, beautiful voice, singer. She actually sang at Lisa's wedding, and she sang a hymn, and she was in front of the church, and she's singing, and then they came and approached her afterward because she was singing like this because she was moving her shoulders.
Oh my goodness!
And they did not like that she was moving her shoulders. So we were living in
The
footloose
control. This is so controlling. That's
Yeah.
control.
Religion is control.
Oh,
Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, yeah.
So control.
But anyway,
That's what
this
religion is all about.
But anyway,
Yeah.
thank you for listening and letting me share my story, and thank you two for sharing yours.
Thank you for sharing your truth, Carol. That's important.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted it to be, so next time in the future when you hear somebody say God, and I'm like, oh God, now you know why.
Yeah.
Now you know. But thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. That was number 73. We'll be moving
Go in
on to
peace.
74. Yes, go in peace. Definitely. I know you want to eat.